Hey everyone, Dominic the Primetime Treasure Hunter here. In this video, I'm going to cover 7 suggestions of things that I believe eBay should do in response to the current scandal involving 2 prior executives of the company and 4 former employees of the company who have been charged in federal court with cyberstalking and with witness tampering. Now, if you want the full details of what transpired, you could go back to the 2 prior videos in which I cover this. But in general, this has to do with a couple who run the e-commerce Bytes website, and some frustration that some within eBay had regarding some of the coverage and comments on the site. And so the crimes that were alleged here were allegedly done to try to get them to stop the negative coverage and stop the negative comments and identify who one of the main sources of these negative comments was. So again, go back if you want more of the specific details. But one of the things that I mentioned in the prior videos is that what we eventually need to get to is a way forwards. Understanding that there still is an ongoing investigation, and there will likely be more details that come out over the coming weeks and maybe months. And when those happen, we'll get to them and address them as needed. But at the same time, we have a community who is largely, there's a lot of people who are upset. There's a lot of people who are disappointed. There's a lot of people who feel embarrassed. And that's not only resellers, that's not only people in the content creator community, that's also people within eBay. You have to remember, eBay is a very large company, and not everybody there is someone who even thinks or behaves like the people who are alleged to have committed the crimes in this case. There are people there who love the company and who do things for the right reasons. And so those people are also upset. But unfortunately, when a group of people do the things that were alleged, that creates this cloud, this dark cloud over everybody within the company. Even though that's not necessarily fair, that's just what happens. And so to address that and to move forwards, there need to be things that happen to improve trust, because right now, and this was present before this all happened, but right now it's even worse, is that there is a significant degree of mistrust between people, a lot of people. I can't give you an exact percentage, but it's a significant percentage of people in the reselling community, resellers, with things that are going on the corporate level within eBay. So when something like this happens, this just goes to reinforce some notions that were already out there and just makes things worse. So one of the main themes that's going to cut across a lot of the suggestions that I'm going to put out there is transparency. And it has to be really transparent. I mean, so transparent that it is very easy to see through. It can't be transparent that you could see through it a little bit, but it's kind of a cloudy window and you get a little bit of a view through there. No. We got to open it up, and we have to be able to really be transparent here. So keep in mind as I go through these suggestions that these are suggestions that are made in the spirit of helping eBay and in the spirit of trying to move forwards in a productive way, because I do love selling on the platform. I get a great deal of enjoyment out of it. I've been doing it, on and off for over 20 years. So I would like to see it continue to succeed. So let's go into the steps. Now, as many of you know, I do like to put things on PowerPoint. So I put together a little PowerPoint slide here, and I will share that on the screen here, and there's a little sneak preview of some of what I'm going to say here. But number 1 is communicate. Acknowledge what went wrong and don't try to sweep it under the rug. Now, on a positive note, what I will say is that Jordan Sweetenham has come out and he has made 2 Facebook posts about what has happened. He came out relatively quickly about it. For those of you who don't know, Jordan Sweetnam is the Senior Vice President and General Manager of the North American division of eBay. And so he has made comments indicating that, he's frustrated, upset, very dedicated to the company for a long time, and, frustrated about what happened. And that's definitely good to hear. At the same time, what I felt was also very important that we needed to hear was a statement, something in writing that would reassure people who comment on social media, whether or not you're an influencer or you're somebody who just comments once in a while on YouTube videos or in a Facebook group or on Twitter, or maybe you just make a couple TikTok videos about reselling here or there. Or maybe you do have a big YouTube channel with tens of thousands of subscribers, or you run a big Facebook group, whatever the case may be. All those people, every single one of them, need to feel that they could make constructive criticisms about the company without fear of discrimination or recriminations in any way, whether that's within the eBay forum itself. They don't want to feel like they're being put on a list where they're being watched and monitored, where they're being devalued in search. They don't want to feel like actions are being taken against them, where listings are being taken down unfairly, where they might lose their account, or they might fear that they're going to get stalked and harassed, or fear that someone could go after them on some other forum that they're on, complaints against their YouTube channels, takedown requests for videos, all sorts of stuff. So obviously, I know there's exceptions of things that could really be a significant violation. Something could be said, that could be something that could go against a law or something like that, and that would need to be handled differently. But I'm talking more in terms of just general constructive criticism, and criticism that might not always be said in the nicest way or with the nicest tone of voice, but still criticism nonetheless. So that's important. And so I was happy to see that Jordan made this statement, which is, eBay will not survive, let alone thrive, if we do not listen to you, if we do not learn from you. So you have my word and my complete commitment. No one who comes forwards and is critical of the company will face any sort of discrimination. That's an important statement right there. As I mentioned previously, one of the reasons I'm making these videos is for preservation of documents, preservation of communications. This is important. 5 years down the road, what if we can't find this Facebook post anymore? So I want to make sure that this information, is kept out there in some way we could always all go back to, because it's important. That is a very important statement that he made. Now, as important as a statement as that is, and the next part, I am not saying in any way to diminish the role of someone as important as a senior vice president and general manager of the North American division. But we need to hear from the CEO. We need to hear from him. Anyone know where he is? I don't know where he is. Over here? I don't see him there. Back here somewhere? Maybe down under. I don't know. I don't see him. I haven't heard from him at all. I know he's new, but I can tell you for sure, 100%, that this is not just my view. Here he is right here. There he is. Jamie Iannone. I don't know him, obviously. Never talked to him. Not saying at all that he's a bad guy or anything like that. Just saying we, as a reselling and content creating community, need to hear from him. We should have heard from him this week. Now, the week's not over yet. We need to hear from him soon. And the longer that it goes out that we don't hear from him, the worse that it becomes, I believe, because it signifies that it doesn't feel that important. That's the signal that's going to come out, that because he's obviously doing other things. I know he's new. He just came on board recently. He's got a lot of things he's doing. But for us, or for a significant percentage of us, there's nothing more important than what's going on in this case. And we want to hear from him. And I could tell you from being on a conference call today with Jordan Sweetnam, a video conference call, and some other people higher up in the company, Marnie Levine, who's vice president of seller operations and engagement, Liz Austin, who's leader in seller engagement and marketing, and other people who are invited from the reselling and content creator community, that was a recurring theme that we want to hear from him. And I could also tell you that that message came across loud and clear to Jordan, who is said he is going to go back and let Jamie Iannone know about this. Now, I did read in an article today from someone in the media who said, well, who's referencing that Jordan Sweden was talking about this, that, well, of course, Jamie Iannone isn't coming out and talking about this because he wasn't here at the time all this happened. And that's true. He wasn't here at the time that all this happened. But there was someone else there at the time who had the same title. Former CEO and president, Devin Wenig. And because the former CEO and president is alleged to have made a general statement to take down the newsletter that I referred to earlier, that's really important. That's really important because that is something that's set in motion and is or alleged to have set in motion the chain of events that transpired that then led to these federal charges. Now, I'm going to emphasize and make this very clear. In fact, I'm going to put up a statement from Devin Wenig himself that says this, so you can just hear him say it, that he has not been charged. He has not been confirmed to have directed the specific acts that are said to have taken place. In fact, let me just read the statement. In a statement to the Free Press, Wenig said, as confirmed by the company following a thorough independent investigation, I did not direct or know anything about the acts that have been charged in Boston. I have spent my career defending press freedoms. What these charges allege is unconscionable. And I will agree with him there. What these charges allege is unconscionable. That last sentence for sure, I will agree with. The problem I have is I have difficulty reconciling this statement with this news headline from Bloomberg Law, which I showed the other day, which says former eBay CEO said take her down after critical coverage. I don't see how to reconcile those two things, but maybe somebody could help me in the comment section and let me know. So I have a problem there. Another thing I have a problem with is that I'm just saying this on moral grounds, and then we'll get back into the suggestions, but this is related to it because it's why I think the current CEO needs to say something. I have a problem with someone being able to make a general comment like take her down that gets passed down to people underneath, and then they go and do the things that are alleged in the criminal complaint, and the person who makes the general vague statement is allowed to just walk away from it all. That I have a problem with it. In fact, speaking of walking away from it, I mean, there's a big, $57 million payout before he left. And also the article that this actually came from is mentioning that he is, currently, if you're wondering what he's doing now, one of the things that he's doing is he is on the board of directors. He was just voted on for another year for General Motors. The General Motors president and CEO said, you know what, since this whatever's, it's regrettable. It's regrettable. And, since it didn't happen at GM, though, we're not going to let it, impact the decisions about whether or not he should be on the board. And, they said that they still have very strong stance against harassment in any form. Okay. So anyway, he's back on the board for another year, $317,000 salary and change, something like that. So anyway, but I say all this because, again, it's important given that context makes it, to me and many others, you tell me what you think below. Agree or disagree down below in the comments if we should hear from the CEO or not. But I think that context makes it so important why we need to hear from him. All right. So communication, some of it's been done. Like I said, I give credit to the parts that have been done, but there's more that needs to take place in that regard. So we'll see what happens. Now, regarding communication, and this is kind of related to it, but it's separate. I separate it out in a sense for a second part, because it's one thing to see a Facebook post. It's one thing to hear things, hear something in a private, video conference, which, by the way, I believe those statements also need to be made so they're out in public so everybody could hear those things, not just see a written form, see it and hear it. But I think we need to see a published company policy on eBay's website. And let me take you to something that some of you probably haven't even gone to before. And we'll get into these other points in a moment. But many of you who go over to eBay go over to this site. Obviously, this is where you sell, this is where you buy. That's ebay.com. Well, if you scroll down ebay.com, you are going to get to the policies page. Just click on that, and that's going to bring you right here. Many of you familiar with it. Lots of eBay rules and policies, and we get held to them. And if we break them in any way, there are consequences for us. Sometimes they're minor, sometimes they're significant. So that's why it's important to put rules and policies in place. And you could see it's important to publish those rules and policies so everybody could see them, so we're all on the same page. eBay knows them and we know them. But let's go over to the eBay company page. That's ebayinc.com. So this is where you will see an overview of the leaders, the business, the portfolio, the history. There's a privacy center, diversity and inclusion. There's all sorts of stuff. A press room, but I cannot find anywhere here that has any policy section that covers what internal policies are to the company about how certain things are handled. And what I specifically want to see put as a policy on letterhead, signed by the CEO himself, that says exactly how the company is going to deal with negative or constructive social media coverage, and making the same exact type of statement that was made by Jordan Sweetenham. I think that's important. And that whatever that statement is, whatever the policies are, that those are clearly linked to company values. Values are important. Companies need a core set of values. I know eBay has those values somewhere, but I'm just saying, I think it would be good to see those things published and linked to whatever the policies and procedures are. Again, it's one thing to see a statement on Facebook, but putting it on, on letterhead signed by the CEO on the site, that has a different level of impact. It's additional transparency. It's something we could all go and look at, and I think it would be helpful. So that is number 2. So let's go over to my third suggestion over here. I hate doing it this way because you can get a sneak peek of what all my things are. But anyway, hire a consulting agency. Now, this would be a third-party consulting agency. This is typically a law firm. Universities will do this sometimes, for example, if there's a scandal within the institution, and they obviously realize that there's a conflict of interest if they investigate themselves. Now, as was mentioned in the prior statement by Devin Wennick, there was an internal investigation, but it was done by eBay's attorneys, done within the company. But what happens, you could hire this third-party agency to come in and do a top-to-bottom review of the company. They'll conduct interviews, and at the end of the day, what has been done in many institutions and with many companies is that they will then publish the results of that, whatever the findings are, and then whatever the concrete recommendations and suggestions are. And you air the good with the bad laundry. That's how you come clean, and how you, basically identify what the problems are and how to solve them. And so, things that could be addressed in there would be examining the company's business practices, the leadership styles within the company. Is there a culture within the company somewhere, even if it might be small? And if so, where is it? Is it in the security division, for example, that promotes the type of behaviors that we see alleged in the criminal complaint? What's the communication style that is encouraged by the company, not only within the company, but from the company to people who interact with it from the outside, like sellers and like content creators? Is there something there that's problematic? Is there something there that could be improved? If so, what? The organizational structure, they could take a deep look at that. Is there something there that's problematic where there could be suggestions for some improvements? Look at the culture and the values within the organization. What do people within the organization, when they're interviewed by a third party, what did they say about company morale? Is there a problem or is there not? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm just saying it could be something that could be really important to look at. So, all those things are important. All those things are important. Some discussion of and suggestions regarding crisis management come out of that as well. I imagine that they do have someone helping them with crisis management right now. But again, this could be a really, really important step. And if this happens, it typically does get announced to the public at some point. And then, like I said, results made available in some form to us so we could take a look. That would be very helpful. Number 4, I know eBay does have ethics training that was confirmed in the video conference call today, but I definitely believe that whenever there is a scandal, whenever there is a problem, this happens in all sorts of institutions. I'm not saying this unique to eBay or anything like that, but you've got to take a second look at what that ethics training is and how to improve it. Are there additional types of courses that are needed? Is there a revision of the language that's needed? Is there revision needed in the way that people acknowledge that they receive the information? How is that happening? Do they have to take a test? Do they just have to signal present in some way? How is that done? So some type of look at that, I think, would be important as well. And letting us know these things are going on would also be important to help give sellers and content creators some additional confidence. Next thing, and eBay has been doing some of this, which is listening to grievances and asking questions. This has been done by going on YouTube channels, including my own. Recently did an interview with someone on the seller side, if you might remember that. So that was good, and took questions from people in the chat and stuff like that, and from myself, and there were no preconditions put on it. So that was good. But the second part I think is important. That is from what I see, I don't see it really happening that much. I'm not saying it's not happening at all, but I think there needs to be a more active asking of questions by people from senior management in eBay to sellers, and also even to content creators. So, for example, if you're going to change the policy on something and then you're going to communicate it to us, asking us for our input, asking us for how, if they change it in a certain way, how that might affect us. What do we think? How would that be perceived by us, rather than just coming down with something out of nowhere and then all of a sudden everyone's reacting to it and upset, and then eBay gets flooded with all these calls and all these emails. What are our main concerns? Asking us directly. I mean, again, it's one thing to be able to listen, which is good to listen. And they had eBay open, and then they started to go out and branch out to different cities, and they're going to revise that starting in July, start going out to more places. So that's more listening. But I think the asking of questions is important too. So that's number 5. Now, number 6, this is something that I mentioned during my interview that I did with the person from management and from the seller side, and this is the need for a seller representative in eBay who reports to eBay. Doesn't mean works for eBay, but means reports over to eBay. This is the analogy I could give you, is that I currently sit on a board of directors for a national organization, and we make policies that affect students, and we want to make sure that we get the input of what students are feeling, what students are thinking, what's their perspective on things. So we actually have a student who sits on the board. It's a non-voting member of the board. But it at least gives us the chance to be able to get the perspective from that person, so that could be incorporated into decision making. I'm not saying there needs to be a seller that literally sits on the board of directors of eBay. I'm just saying that there needs to be something more formalized than is there now. And I think that would be a tangible step that eBay could take. And it doesn't even have to necessarily be one seller. It could be multiple sellers. It could be a group of sellers or something like that. But I definitely think, that would be an important step. And lastly, number 7 is to better address core issues that are upsetting sellers. Because I see it over and over in comments in my YouTube channel, in my Facebook group. There's a core set of issues, and I can't go over every single one of them here, but there are things that are really getting people upset and causing mistrust. And so one of the main issues that comes up over and over is a feeling that the company is really trying to mostly make its money off of seller fees, as opposed to promoting an environment where more sales are going to be made. So promoted listing fees comes up often in this discussion. People get very upset about that when they see that a large portion of the revenue is coming in based on advertising, which has to do with promoted listing fees, and that's fees coming out of sellers' pockets. So that's definitely a big area of concern. There's also a big area of concern in which a lot of sellers feel that there's an imbalance between the way that eBay is managing the concerns of shareholders versus the stakeholders. So the difference between people who are investing and making money off of the stock versus people from the buyer and seller side. So there's things like that there are a lot of concerns about as well. There's a lot of concerns that come up regarding outdated technology. That's another issue that comes up over and over. So there's a lot of things. I mean, it's not just one issue. Inconsistent application of policy is another problem. There's a lot of problems that have happened with managed payments, in which there's people being forced into managed payments before a lot of the issues have been ironed out regarding certain things, that if you don't sell them a lot, if it's not your main area, you won't be able to sell them when you're on managed payments, such as coins and bullion and adult items and stuff like that. And that the kind of stuff that just gets sellers really upset. Communication about how and when policy changes are implemented. There's a lot of themes like that. And I mean, I think that trying more to get at the root cause of those things and fixing those things would be a much greater way to focus attention from eBay's side. Because if those things get addressed better, guess what? You will not have to deal as much with negative comments and as much constructive criticism. Of course, there's always going to be some level of that, but you will improve those things. It's good overall for eBay in the long run. So I think there's a long way to go. I think there's room for improvement. I don't know. I don't want to be Pollyannish and say all these things are going to get better, everything's going to improve, and tomorrow everything's fine. I don't know. It could be one of these things where things will not improve unless the company is sold. I don't know. I just don't. We'll have to see. It's going to be a work in progress. But one of the ways we'll get we'll get a better idea of whether or not things are going to improve is if we see some of these tangible steps that I've mentioned, or others that maybe I haven't mentioned. Like I said, if you have ideas, put them down below. We'll see what happens. Where I'm going to be really concerned is if the only way this is addressed is just with words. And my strong feeling, words alone cannot be how this particular crisis is solved. We need more than words at this point. We need words, but we also need action. So with that, I'm going to wrap up this video. If you like the video, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe, especially if you're new. Check out, there's almost 700 videos on this channel, especially if you're into reselling. I particularly like it. Like I said, if you're just coming into this video, you didn't see the other 2 that I did on this topic, check that out as well. So enjoy having you here if you're a first timer. And thanks to all the long timers for all of your support as well. Hopefully we'll get some treasure hunt videos in this weekend too, so we won't be talking about this the whole time, but it is super important. That's why I keep focusing on it. I want to make sure our attention stays on it, until we get some resolution. So, all right, everyone. So hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you at the next one. Take care.